Furqan Nazeeri is a technology entrepreneur with more than 15 years of experience advising and building high-growth software companies. He spends his time these days not only advising entrepreneurs, but also building his latest company, Extension Engine. Furqan, welcome to the Language of Business.
Awesome to be here.
Awesome to have you. So much of the fun of being an entrepreneur is building a company, especially from scratch. Why would an entrepreneur then ever want to sell?
Selling a company is a very personal decision. If starting a company is like getting married, then selling it is a little bit like getting divorced. There's a lot of reasons that could cause that to happen. You could have fallen out of love. It could be a decision not yours. Your partner could have left you. Ultimately, an offer was made that you couldn't refuse.
But in marriage, you rarely divorce for the money. You might divorce about the money, but not for the money. How about as an entrepreneur?
That's where the metaphor breaks down. I think the key thing here is to remember that financing activities and business operations are two different things, especially when you raise money from a third party. Sometimes the decisions are out of your control. And one of the things I love about my company, Extension Engine, is that we have no outside investors, no bank debt, 5 partners that are committed to the long term, and frankly, I joke that my exit strategy is death. And what that means is that we get to focus on solving our customers' problems. And I really like that, being able to separate the financing activities from the business activities. Basically, you get to do the thing that I love most, which is run a company.
Having done this for well over a decade, is it important for everyone to have as much passion as you have as the entrepreneur?
I don't have a meter to measure passion. There's no passionometer in this business, so I don't worry about that. When my employee walks in the door of a customer, they are the brand of my company. And so it's really important that they're bought into the mission, they understand our principles and values, and they know what we do and why, and to be able to communicate that when they're in front of a client. And so I really look for alignment.
Even if it's a lower level employee and not somebody in the executive suite?
More importantly, we sit around with the executives, but that's not who your customer is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's really important to have that alignment and understanding, and really that's the executives, that's the leadership's job, is to communicate and make sure that the team is aligned.
How do you determine when the right time has arrived to bring in professional management?
Professor Noam Wasserman at Harvard Business School has a framework for thinking about this. There's 2 types of entrepreneurs, essentially, the rich type and the king type. The rich type are focused on doing whatever it takes to get to a successful exit. Essentially, the theory being to have a smaller piece of a bigger pie. The king types are interested in control, and it's about maintaining ownership of all the decisions as you go through. So you might end up, if you're a pure rich type entrepreneur, end up stacking your management team before you even raise your first round of funding and using that to get to an exit quickly. If you're a king type entrepreneur, you might end up waiting to the last possible minute when you're in a crisis.
What would you prefer as an entrepreneur in terms of a liquidity event, a company sale versus an IPO?
I actually looked at the numbers, and there are about 40,000 companies that have been funded by VCs in the last decade. Of those, just 39 companies have actually reached $1 billion or more in valuation. That's a fraction of a percentage. 75% of companies actually fail, meaning they go out of business outright or they sell and don't return capital to investors. So it's actually a very small percentage of companies that actually get to a position, less than 1%, where they can even think about going public. So to answer your question, I would pick an IPO if I had the choice, but 99+% of entrepreneurs don't even get to make that choice.
Even if there's a lockout period that you can't sell those shares for 60, 90, or 180 days?
Well, I think if you're in the middle of a bubble in 1999, that's something, that you would consider. But those times, I think, are in our past, and, real good companies, the vast majority of them are going to go in trade sales these days.
So much time is spent focusing on new business versus existing business. How do you think through taking care of your existing customers and maximizing the lifetime value of them versus always focusing on new customers or fresh blood?
It's an important question. I think initially you don't have any customers. So it's 100% about new customer acquisition. As you get farther into maturity, you're going to end up with some mix of harvesting and sort of land and expand, get your new customers and then grow business with them. the rule of thumb is maybe 2/3 from existing clients, 1/3 from new business in that sort of intermediate stage. The other interesting question is, when do you get rid of customers? When do you look at the customers you got, for example, in the early days and think about, you know what, that we had to do a pivot, we need to get out of that customer base. And that's actually a really a tougher thing as an entrepreneur. Those early customers can be sort of your first friends, and I think knowing when and having the discipline of when to get rid of a customer in a startup is actually as important as knowing when to and how much to focus on acquiring new customers.
Is your opinion the same when it comes to new versus existing products?
It's a little bit different. Launching one successful product is hard enough, let alone two. And oftentimes it's many years later in the company's life cycle that they're come to the point where they have a mature first product that's been successful, and now they need to launch a second product into the market. The skill sets that are successful in launching a new product are actually slightly different than the skill sets of an organization required to maintain and grow a business at a later stage.
How so?
Well, one of the things that you have to do in terms of new product development is you have to be really disciplined about listening to your customer, understanding their desires and requests, creating a new product out of that. Once you get more into a mature product, you're looking more at a portfolio of issues around pricing, around sales channel and strategy and management and operational issues that are different from those early product development. I often find that organizations that are good at one don't necessarily exercise that other muscle. Oftentimes it makes sense to go outside of your organization and try to recruit some of that DNA to come in, or retask some of your early founders and give them another crack at that new product development.
Furqan, thank you. Furqan Nazeeri, technology entrepreneur with 15 years of experience with multiple companies.
How do you know what your business is worth? Greg Stalder talks with a tech expert whose head is firmly in the clouds. Next on The Language of Business.